It really happened in New York. He looked right at me and said, "You're lucky we even let you stay." He didn't yell, just said it like it was nothing. So, I didn't argue. I quietly packed my things and left the house. A few days later, I sold the land the house was sitting on. No one saw me packing, but they definitely heard the bulldozers. That night, we all sat at the dinner table. The sound of silverware tapping against plates was sharp, like snapping bones. No one said a word. The roast chicken tasted perfect, and the mashed potatoes were warm and smooth, but no one seemed to care. Angela's diamond earring swung as she leaned forward to put down her wine glass with a loud clink. Her voice was sweet, but her words were full of poison. "If Mom is still living here when the Hendersons come next weekend, it's going to be really embarrassing," she said, her eyes locked on Jason. "They're from Westchester. They throw fancy dinner parties with wine pairings and printed invitations." Then she looked at me. Cold, hard eyes. The same eyes I once looked into when I sewed the hem of her wedding dress. I had opened my home to her like she was my own daughter. And now, I was just a problem to be dealt with. "If she's still living here, we'll look small," Angela said slowly, like I wouldn't understand unless she spoke carefully. Jason didn't even lift his eyes from his phone. He just pushed food around his plate with his fork. Angela kept going. "Let's be honest. She doesn't pay rent. She doesn't help with the bills. Her garden's half dead, and she's using up space we could turn into a sunroom." Then she looked me straight in the face. "If you're just going to freeload, maybe you should think about moving into assisted living. Let the state take care of you. That's what it's there for." I sat still, my hands folded in my lap. I didn't say a word. Angela raised her voice. "You should be grateful we even let you stay here. Most people wouldn't. We've been more than generous." Jason finally looked up for a second. "Yeah, Mom. Angela's right," he said with no feeling at all. "Most people your age are in nursing homes. It's not like you're helping out." He wasn't even angry. He just didn't care. That made it worse. He was my son, my only child. I looked around the room, the table stained from years of family dinners, the cabinet, with the crack from when Jason crashed into it with his toy truck, the curtains I had hand-stitched while waiting for a phone call that never came. Every corner of this house held my memories, but to them, I wasn't family anymore. I was just an old woman in the way, a burden, a ghost in a sweater. Angela stood up and carried her plate to the kitchen, her heels clicking on the floor. "I'll call the contractor tomorrow," she said. "We'll start on the guest house Monday. We'll need the garden cleared." My garden, the last place in this house that felt like it belonged to me. Jason gave a shrug. "Guess you'll need to move your stuff, Mom. They'll need access to the backyard." I stood slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't let it show. I looked at Jason, really looked at him. He had his father's eyes, but none of his passion. I had raised him with everything I had. Cold nights, long days, carrying the weight of his future on my back. I gave him everything, even this land. And now, all he had to give me was silence. A silence that cut deeper than any insult. I walked back to the little cottage behind the main house. Just 2 small rooms, a tiny kitchen, and a garden I cared for with love. I had planted rosemary, tomatoes, basil, and lined the back fence with marigolds. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At my little table, I opened a drawer and took out a brown envelope. Inside were the original land deeds. My name was clearly printed on every page. I had let Jason build on this land, let him live here. But I never signed over ownership. They never asked. They just assumed. I placed the deed on the table next to a folded map showing the property lines, my cottage, the garden, even their big house. It was all on my land. They thought I was weak because I didn't fight. They thought being quiet meant I had given up. But they were wrong. I looked out the window. Lights from Jason's house spilled into the yard. Music played in the distance. Angela probably setting up for her important guests. I imagined my cottage torn down, replaced by a modern guest house with white stone walls and a bar. I pictured their friends smiling, sipping wine, complimenting the view, never knowing they were standing on land built by a woman who had been erased. But I hadn't disappeared. I was still here, and I still owned every inch of it. That night, I didn't sleep. I lit a single candle and just sat there, watching the flame slowly melt down to nothing but the wick. My mind kept going, back to my husband. He had died years ago, before he could see who Jason grew up to be. And honestly, maybe that was a blessing. Before the sun came up, I got up quietly and opened my closet. My old suitcase was still there, the zipper still sticking the way it always did. I didn't pack much, just the basics. A few clothes, my small jewelry box, a photo of Jason when he was just a boy, and the deed to the land. I didn't cry. I didn't leave a note. There wasn't anything left to say. The air outside was cool and still held the weight of the night. My garden sparkled with dew. I knelt down, pressed my hand into the dirt one last time, and whispered, "Thank you." Then I stood, locked the cottage door behind me, and walked away. Not because I didn't have anywhere else to go, but because I finally remembered that this land was mine. They had forgotten. But I hadn't. Not anymore. It hadn't always been like this. After my husband died, the apartment we shared felt too quiet, too empty. Everywhere I turned, I saw him. His slippers by the door, the chipped coffee mug he loved, that saggy old chair he refused to replace. For 6 months, I walked through that place like a ghost, just listening, waiting for footsteps that would never come back. Then one morning, I opened all the windows, let the light in. And I realized, if I didn't leave, that sadness would swallow me whole. I sold the apartment. It wasn't worth much, just a small one-bedroom in Queens, but it gave me enough to buy a little piece of land upstate. The air there was fresher, quieter. I thought I'd found the place where I could finally breathe again. Jason was having a rough time back then. He'd just lost his job at a print shop and was crashing on friends' couches, trying to find warehouse work. When I told him I was moving, he looked at me with those soft, pleading eyes he's had since he was little. "Mom, can I come with you? Just until I get back on my feet?" Of course I said yes. I mean, what kind of mother would I be if I didn't? I used my savings to clear the land and build a little home for myself. Just 2 rooms, perfect for one. I told Jason he could use the rest of the land if he wanted to stay and build something. He hugged me so tight that day I thought my ribs might crack. "I'll never forget this," he whispered. But he did. Back then, Angela wasn't in the picture yet. It was just Jason and me. We planted our first rosemary bush together. I showed him how to care for soil, how to turn compost, how to trim tomato plants without bruising them. He seemed happy. He picked up construction jobs and, after a while, built a small 2-bedroom house on the land. I was proud of him. I really thought this place would bring our family closer. Then came Angela. She was beautiful, charming, always sweet around Jason. But when he wasn't looking, her voice changed. It got sharp, cold. "Could you not hang laundry in front? It makes the place look cheap. I cleaned the kitchen this morning. Please don't bake again today. It leaves a smell. Your little garden is fine, I guess, but the HOA is really picky about appearances." We didn't have an HOA, but Angela acted like we lived in some high-end gated community instead of a quiet patch of shared land. She started changing everything, redecorating, adding things without asking. She set up a big fire pit right next to my garden, told her guests they had converted the back into a guest space, referring to my cottage. She even started using my kitchen during parties like it was part of their house. At first, I tried to be understanding. Thought maybe it was just stress, newlyweds figuring things out. I cooked for them, watched their dog when they traveled, watered their plants. I was doing my part. Then one day, I came by to return a mixing bowl. I wasn't trying to snoop, I just happened to overhear her on the phone. She's just always there, like a quiet little maid. I mean, I guess it's convenient. Free help, right? I didn't go inside. I left the bowl at her back door and walked home, my chest burning. After that, everything changed. I noticed how Jason stopped coming by, stopped helping in the garden, stopped calling me Mom and started calling me Ma like I was someone else, someone distant. Angela took control of their home, and eventually mine too. She told me when I could have guests, scheduled loud construction without telling me. One day, a landscaping crew she hired even pulled out my marigolds by mistake. I didn't argue. I kept my head down. It's what I'd always done. I stayed quiet, tended my garden, fed the birds, and every night I lit a candle and remembered who I was and what this land really meant. Every Sunday I lit a candle for my husband. It was my small ritual, a quiet promise I kept even after all these years. But as time passed, even those moments felt like they belonged less and less to me. The boundaries, once so clear, had started to blur. My cottage, once a home, now felt like a shed tucked behind someone else's life. And I had become the helpful old woman who didn't know when to leave. I had given them space. I had given them peace. And piece by piece, they had erased me. By the second summer after Jason and Angela moved in, the parties became constant. There were brunches with themes, cocktail hours with dress codes, backyard movie nights, and barbecues where the laughter was loud enough to rattle the glass in my kitchen window. But it wasn't the noise that hurt. It was the eraser. Angela never wanted guests to see the back of the property, my space, my home. Modest and clean as it was, it didn't fit the polished image she wanted to present. She'd block off the path to my door with tall drink tables, stacked folding chairs, anything to keep people out of view. "Keep everything in the front yard," I heard her say once. "There's no reason anyone needs to see back there." Back there. That's what I had become. A direction, a problem, something to avoid. Jason didn't say much at those events. He stood near the grill, beer in hand, smiling in that empty way people do when they've stopped steering their own lives. He had grown quiet with me. Where? Once he'd stop by for fresh herbs or sit at my table for tea. Now he barely knocked. Angela handled everything now. One afternoon, as I watered my lettuce rows, Angela burst out of the house wearing a flowing cream sundress. Her sunglasses were perched on her head like a crown. "Mother," she snapped, voice tight with irritation, "could you not do that today?" I looked down at the hose in my hand. "Do what?" She gestured to the yard. "Watering, compost, whatever. We've got guests coming. It's not really the vibe." I wanted to laugh. Compost had done more to feed this land than any of her appetizers ever would. But I didn't laugh. I turned off the hose and nodded. "Thanks," she said, already walking away. A week later, I saw them, bright orange stakes poking through my garden soil like little plastic insults. I walked up the path and found Jason carrying lumber from the driveway. "What are those for?" I asked. "Oh, that." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Angela's working with a contractor. We're building a guest house back here. Maybe do an Airbnb. It'll raise the property value." I blinked. "But this is my garden." Jason shrugged. "I know, Ma, but come on. You've had it for years. We need the space." I felt the color drain from my face. He didn't even sound cruel, just indifferent, like I was a tree in the way. Like I was clutter. "Angela says it's kind of an eyesore," he added, not meeting my gaze. "I mean, it's not really modern." That night, I stood by the window and stared out at the orange stakes. They dotted the ground like little flags of conquest. I wanted to pull them up, rip them out, toss them into the trash, but I knew that wouldn't stop what was coming. Not really. So I waited. I listened. And one morning, the words I had feared finally came. I was in the kitchen pouring tea when I heard Angela's voice outside, on speakerphone. "Yes," she said, giddy. "Contractor comes Tuesday. We're starting with the foundation. No, it won't be in the way. We're clearing all that garden, trees, everything." She laughed. "Yup, even the little granny hut. Next month, that thing's coming down. We'll finally have a clean backyard, no more eyes." Granny hut. My hand shook. Tea sloshed over the rim of my cup. They weren't just building something new. They were clearing me out like I was overgrowth. Angela kept talking. "Jason's checking with the county about permits, but it's our land, our house. The old lady's just lingering." Lingering. They weren't just trying to make changes. They were trying to erase me. Entirely. That afternoon, Jason came by. A rare visit. He didn't sit down, just stood there, fidgeting near the doorway like a teenager about to ask for something awkward. "Hey, Ma," he said. "Angela and I were talking. Maybe it's time to think about the next chapter." "The next chapter?" I echoed. "Yeah, you know, retirement communities. Assisted living. Someplace nice, with people your age." I looked at him then, not as my son, but as a man I no longer recognize. He said it like he was giving me a thoughtful gift, a place to live out the rest of my days, tucked away somewhere quiet, out of sight. A home for the elderly, he called it. "There are some nice ones nearby," he said. "We'll help cover the cost." What he really meant was, go somewhere else to grow old, somewhere guests at their parties won't have to see me. I didn't say anything, just smiled, thanked him politely, and told him I'd think about it. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, holding the deed to the property. I traced my fingers over the paper. My name was still there, still mine. Everything they had now, this life they built, started with what I gave, and now they wanted to push me aside like I was some leftover piece of furniture. They thought I wouldn't do anything. They thought I'd just stay quiet. But what they didn't know was that I had already started writing a new chapter, one they weren't expecting. It was Sunday morning when I decided to speak up. The sun felt warm on my face as I snipped a few herbs from the garden. I put a little bouquet of basil and mint into a mason jar and walked over to the main house. I knocked gently on the back door. Angela opened it, her lips tight, eyes darting straight to the jar like I might spill something on her spotless floor. "Good morning," I said. "Is Jason around?" "He's upstairs," she said, stepping aside just enough to let me in. "Is this important? We've got a busy day." "It won't take long." I sat carefully at the edge of the couch, in a living room that once felt like part of my home, now filled with cold, expensive smells and stiff silence. Jason came down the stairs, stretching. "What's up, Ma?" I held the jar in both hands. "I heard about the plans," I said softly. "The guest house. I was hoping we could leave part of the garden alone. Maybe that little corner with the marigolds. It was your father's favorite spot." Jason looked at Angela, then back at me. "Mom, you've had that space for years," he said. "We've been more than fair. You don't pay rent. You don't help with the mortgage. Angela and I want a home that feels like ours now." "I'm not trying to be in the way," I said gently. "It's just that small patch. It means something." Angela let out a sharp breath. "This again?" Jason raised a hand, cutting her off. "It's not about the garden, Ma. It's about what's fair. You've been living here for free, using the water, the lights, everything, but not really giving anything back." That word hit me like a slap, not contributing. Angela crossed her arms and stepped forward. "Let's be real," she said. "You're freeloading. I'm sorry, but someone has to say it. This isn't sustainable. We're not running a charity." Freeloader. as if all the years I spent building this life for them, the land, the house, the support, meant nothing now. Jason jumped in, trying to soften the blow. Angela's been looking into some places, nice state homes. They've got activities, music nights, meals with other folks your age. It might even be better for you. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. You want me to leave? Jason sighed. We just think it's time for a change. You're getting older, Mom. You should be somewhere people can take care of you. There it was. Let the state take care of you. Said not with anger, worse, with that cold, empty tone of someone who had already moved on in his head. Angela looked pleased. Jason avoided my eyes and pretended to scroll through his phone. I stood up slowly and placed the jar on the table. I understand, I said. Angela blinked. That's it? Jason looked surprised. Really? I nodded. You're right. You deserve the space. And I walked out, down the stone path, past the garden beds where Jason once played, in the dirt beside me. The marigolds were blooming bright. Their smell, earthy, sweet, drifted through the air like a memory. I paused. I had never seen myself as someone who could be erased. I thought roots mattered, that history meant something. But people forget. They forget what you gave, what you grew, who you were. They forget that staying quiet doesn't mean you've given up. That night I sat alone in my little cottage, the deed lying heavy in my lap. It was time not to argue, not to beg, but to act. To remind them, gently but firmly, just whose land they were standing on. At exactly 3:04 a.m., I climbed up to the top shelf of my closet and unzipped the old canvas suitcase. The summer air hung still around me. Quiet, but not empty. I was done being silent. The air was thick that night, the kind of heavy summer humidity that made even silence feel like it was pressing down on your chest. But my hands didn't shake. My mind was calm and steady. I started packing slowly, folding each sweater one by one. The maroon one had frayed sleeves. The gray cardigan was missing 2 buttons. Then I picked up a soft, pale blue blouse, the same one I wore when Jason graduated high school. I could still remember him wrapping his arms around me, his graduation, tassel brushing my cheek as he whispered, "We did it, Mom." I laid it gently on top of the pile. In the side pocket, I tucked away a photo of Jason as a little boy. He was about 3, sitting in a bucket of soapy water in our backyard, grinning from ear to ear, bubbles all over him, with his 2 front teeth missing. That photo had been stuck in my mirror frame for over 20 years. Now it was coming with me. Beside it, I added a small velvet pouch. Inside was a gold chain my husband gave me on our 15th wedding anniversary. I hadn't worn it in years. The clasp had broken, but I still couldn't leave it behind. Some things just need to be carried, even if they've lost their shine. Once the bag was packed, I sat down at the small wooden table where I used to shell peas and sip my evening tea. I pulled out a notepad and wrote one sentence. Jason, my dear son, I never wanted to be a burden. I'm going now, not out of shame, but peace. Take care. Love, Mom. There was no anger in it, no guilt, just the quiet truth. I folded the note and placed it under the salt shaker on the kitchen counter, somewhere he'd be sure to see it. At exactly 3:41 a.m., I locked the door behind me. The moonlight glowed over the garden, catching drops of dew like tiny silver tears. I walked past the marigolds, still bright and blooming, and didn't cry. I didn't even look back. I just kept walking. Down the road, a cab was waiting. I had called it earlier using the name Mrs. Elkins, an old fake name I used back when I was a teacher. For privacy. Just a habit. As the cab pulled away, I turned once to look at the 2 houses behind me. Mine, small and warm. Theirs, big and lit up, string lights still dangling from last weekend's party. The houses looked like a mother and child standing side by side. But the child thought it had outgrown the mother. By dawn, I checked into a quiet little hotel near the city. I used my maiden name. In my room, I spread out the deed on the desk. My name, my legal name, was printed on every page, plain and clear. I touched the signature line. I had never crossed it out, never transferred anything. Jason had just assumed the land was theirs now. They all had. But assumptions don't change the law. At 8:03 a.m., I called Paul Benedetti, my late husband's oldest friend and former law partner. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he answered, his voice softened right away. "Margaret," he said, almost whispering. "Is that really you?" "It's me, Paul," I said. "I need your help, today." An hour later, we met at his downtown office. He looked older, but his handshake was still strong. The whole place smelled like pine wood and fresh coffee. He studied the deed carefully. "I want to sell the land," I told him. He blinked. "All of it?" "All of it." He looked up, at me, serious. "This isn't a casual decision, is it?" "You know me better than that." He smiled, just a little. "I do." We spent the morning going through everything, records, boundaries, making sure there were no issues. By noon, Paul had called some people he trusted in real estate. "There's a developer who's been trying to buy land in that area for months," he said. "Your property would complete their plans. They're ready to pay, and pay fast." I nodded, fingers curling slightly. I thought of Angela's voice. That old granny hut's coming down. I thought of Jason's. "Let the state take care of you." I thought of the marigolds. Then I said, "Let's do it." By 2:17 p.m., the sale was done. Every inch of it, gone. The rose beds, the old tool shed, the fire pit Angela installed without asking. The pool Jason bragged about, their dream home, my quiet little cottage, all of it, sold. The woman handling the deal was in her 30s. She smiled and reached out her hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Green. Demolition begins next week." "Of course," I said calmly. "Please let me know if they resist. I have the original deed." As I left, I smiled to myself. They always say, "We want a boy." But once you have one, well, sometimes they forget what you gave. But me? I didn't forget. Not anymore. Back at the hotel, I set my suitcase down by the door and walked to the window. The city stretched out before me, lights blinking like stars that had fallen to earth. I made myself a cup of hotel tea, too strong, bitter, but I drank it anyway. I raised the cup to the sky, to peace, to land, to the quiet kind of justice that doesn't scream but is still heard. It all began with a letter taped to their front door, a plain white envelope, hand-delivered, sealed with the gold crest of the development firm. Inside, a notice of property transfer, a demolition schedule, and one final warning: vacate all structures within 5 business days. Angela found it first. She screamed. Jason thought it was a prank. He laughed, just once, until he saw the papers. He grabbed them from her hands, scanned them once, then again, and again. His face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. "This can't be right." Angela tore through the house, opening drawers, flipping through files, desperate to find something, anything, that proved the land was theirs. But she came up empty. Jason called the county office, then the assessor, then the registrar. Each time, he got the same answer. "The land is no longer in your name. It was never in your name. Title records show original ownership under Margaret Green sale, completed and finalized last Friday." Jason's voice broke. "But she never, that's impossible. It's ours. We live here." "I'm sorry, sir," the clerk replied. "According to our records, you were tenants. Informal, yes. But with no legal claim, you'll need to vacate. Angela sat down hard at the kitchen table, both hands clutching her temples. You said it was ours, she hissed. Jason didn't move. He stood frozen, the notice dangling from his fingers. She never signed it over, he whispered. She gave me permission to build, but she never gave me the land. Angela's face twisted. Are you telling me we spent $200,000 remodeling a house we don't even own? Jason said nothing. He didn't have to. Angela stood up so fast her chair tipped backwards. You're unbelievable! You told me she gave it to you. You said it was understood. God, Jason, how do you not check these things? I didn't think I had to, he shouted finally. She's my mother. Angela laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah? Well, your mother just sold the ground out from under us. That night, they called me, 9 times, then 10, then 11. I sat by the window of my new apartment on the 10th floor, watching the phone light up and go dark again. It overlooked Central Park, not my garden, but peaceful in its own way. A different kind of peace, the kind that comes after a storm. I let the phone ring. The next morning, the bulldozers came, bright yellow, like school buses with teeth. Engines roared, gravel crunched. Men in hard hats read blueprints and drank coffee. Angela ran out in her robe, mascara streaked across her. Cheeks. You can't do this, she shouted at the crew leader. We live here. He looked at his clipboard, unbothered. Ma'am, paperwork says you have until noon to remove your belongings. Jason stumbled out after her, barefoot, shirtless, clutching his laptop like a child carrying a stuffed animal through a fire. The neighbors peeked through blinds. A few stepped outside, murmuring in disbelief. Angela stormed over to a worker. This is illegal. My husband owns this house. The man raised one eyebrow. He built a house on land he doesn't own? That's not illegal. That's just unfortunate. Jason stood there, chest heaving, watching one of the machines roar to life and tear through the side fence, the one he built himself just 2 summers ago. He pulled out his phone again, dialed, let it ring. By noon, the garden was gone. By 1 p.m., the guest house, half finished, was ripped up like paper. By 2:30, the first corner of their dream home cracked open. Angela screamed when the wood split. Jason didn't. He just held her. The way a man holds something he never really valued until it's already being taken away. They left that evening in a borrowed pickup truck, clothes and electronics tossed into plastic bins. The workers paused to let them drive out of what was left of the driveway. Behind them, their house stood gutted, its insides open to the sky. That night, I got one last voicemail. Jason's voice was hoarse. Mom, please call me. We didn't know. I didn't. He didn't mean for it to get this bad. That's what he said, voice trailing off in the voicemail he left. I saved the message, but didn't call him back. Not yet. It took 3 full days to tear the house down. Their house. Piece by piece. Board by board. The pool was drained, smashed up, and broken into chunks. The guest house came apart like it was made of twigs. Even that fancy stone walkway, the one Angela had overpaid for, was ripped out and tossed into a dump truck. Nothing was left behind. Each day the construction crew sent me photos, just like I'd asked. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to watch the truth finally come out, bit by bit. The neighbors didn't know what to do. Some just stood there across their yards, staring. Others whispered, inside their homes. Everyone knew Jason and Angela. They'd seen the loud parties, the new furniture, the big plans for remodeling. Now those same neighbors watched as bulldozers scooped it all up like it was trash. Angela wouldn't leave the first day. She stood on the sidewalk yelling at the workers. This is a mistake. You can't do this. I live here, she screamed. But the crew had their orders. Everything was legal. The papers were signed. The timeline was tight. The next day, she wasn't yelling anymore. She was crying. That's when Jason came to find me. I was sitting in the little courtyard of my apartment building, watering a small pot of herbs I'd started. Rosemary, of course. It's not the same as my old garden, but even here in the city, life finds a way. He looked different, thinner, tired, like a balloon slowly losing air. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking, "we didn't know." I didn't say anything. "She never meant it like that," he kept going. "Angela, she just says stuff, but I didn't mean to. Mom, please, cancel the contract, or at least delay it. Just give us a little more time." He sounded like a kid again, like the time he broke a window and tried to cover it up, or when he lost his backpack right before finals, or forgot to call on Mother's Day and showed up with gas. Station flowers instead. I looked at him, then quietly went inside. I came back with an envelope. Inside was a copy of the purchase agreement, stamped, notarized, final. He took it with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the first page. "Is this your signature?" he asked. "Yes," I said. His eyes filled with tears. "You sold everything?" "Yes." He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Angela came the next morning. No makeup, no high heels, just an old hoodie and sweatpants, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked like someone who had lost control and didn't know who to be mad at anymore. She didn't knock on my door. She knelt on the sidewalk, right outside my building. Knees on the concrete, head bowed. I saw her from the window, her body trembling. "I'm sorry," she said, so softly I barely heard it. "Please, just give us another chance." I stepped outside slowly. She didn't even look up. "I'll do anything," she said. "I'll fix it. I'll make Jason apologize. Just please don't let them tear down what's left. That house, it's our life." I stood there for a long time. The morning air was cool and quiet. Then I reached into my purse and handed her the same envelope. "Your husband already saw this," I said gently. "It's done." She looked up at me. Her eyes weren't cold or mean anymore. They were just empty. "How could you?" she whispered. "I gave you the land," I said, "the house, the garden. I even gave you my silence. And you used it all up." She closed her eyes. "We didn't think you'd ever—" "You didn't think I could," I said. Angela stood slowly. Her knees were red from the pavement. She took the envelope without saying another word. And then she walked away. I didn't hate her. I didn't feel sorry for her either. I just remembered all the things she assumed I'd forget. The view from the 10th floor isn't like my old garden, but it has its own kind of beauty. I can see the whole city from here. The lights look like stars that decided to settle down on the ground instead of the sky. The sound of cars below is like a soft, steady tide. And the air up here, well, it doesn't smell like earth anymore, but it smells like something new. My apartment isn't big, but it's cozy and beautiful. The floors are smooth hardwood. The kitchen has shiny granite counters, and one whole wall is made of glass. It shows off the city skyline like a picture in a frame. There's a little balcony too, just big enough for a pot of mint I planted. It's not the same as the big vegetable garden I used to care for, but the mint grows strong in the sunlight, steady and stubborn, kind of like me. I sit with a cup of tea in my hands. It's warm, tastes earthy with a bit of lemon and a leaf from that mint plant. It helps me feel calm. It reminds me that even when life feels twisted or hurt, it can still surprise you with sweetness. The phone buzzes on the counter beside me. It's Jason again. His name lights up on the screen like it's trying to reach out to something that's already drifted too far away. I don't move. I let it ring. He's been calling for days. At first his messages were calm, then they turned desperate, then shaky. "Mom, please," one message said. "We're staying at a friend's. Just talk to me." Angela wants to say sorry. She didn't mean it. We didn't know it was that serious. We didn't think you'd really... Then finally, "I'm sorry." And that part I believe. I believe he's sorry. But being sorry doesn't bring back a garden. It doesn't erase words like freeloader. It doesn't fix the nights I spent feeling invisible in the house I gave them. I pick up the phone, look at the screen. His name glows for a second. Then I press the side button. The screen goes dark. I don't hate him. I really don't. But I've stopped making room in my heart for people who can't tell the difference between kindness and weakness. I didn't destroy their home. He built it on land that wasn't his, and forgot to ask who owned the ground underneath. Now he remembers. Outside my window, the city hums with life. People are out there, living, loving, making mistakes, making peace. The world doesn't stop just because someone's house falls down, or because someone's heart finally stands back up. I take another sip of my tea. It tastes stronger today. They say revenge is best served cold. But this isn't revenge. It's balance. It's the quiet, steady return of fairness after years of being pushed aside. I breathe in, deeply. The mint in the air is fresh and sharp. I didn't lose a son. I lost the idea that he ever truly saw me, and yes, that kind of grief hurts. But oddly, it also sets you free, because now I see myself. I see what I've built, what I've survived, what I've taken back, not through yelling or bitterness, but through calm choices and quiet strength, through signed papers, through walking away. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt ignored, taken for granted, or quietly erased, let me say this to you. You are not weak for staying quiet. You are wise for waiting. And when your moment comes, you won't need to shout. You'll just need to stand. If you've been silent for too long and need someone to tell your story, subscribe to Her Yesterday by Emma. Because silence isn't weakness. It's a kind of wisdom. And real strength doesn't need to make a lot of noise to be heard.